House Naelax, a name feared throughout the realm. They should fear us. It's what keeps them in line and us in power. Early in our history, we were best known for our ingenuity in armed combat and strategic warfare. In times of war, the men of my house were often called upon to lend their expertise and their soldiers. Sadly, all of their efforts were so easily forgotten when Ivan I did what none other dared to do and stood in defiance to his king. No longer could he bear to watch the decline of a country his ancestors fought so hard to defend. And so were the rulers of ineptitude in House Rax removed from power. The Great Deception, they called it. A necessary action to restore order to a failing kingdom. And while the realm is but a painful shadow of its former self, we of House Naelax will not yield. We will not bend. Whatever side of the coin you're on, it doesn't matter. We are still the rightful rulers of this kingdom and the premier royal house of Aerdy. Today, the lands of House Naelax span the majority of the North Province, the only exceptions being the city of Winither, ruled by Lankaster Garasteth, the lands of Highlander, ruled by Lancaster's brother Alistair Garasteth, and the trifecta of Rinlaru, Altia, and Kaport Bay, all owned by Torquann lords. Of all the Naelax lords of the North Province, our most prominent ruler is Grace Grenell, the oldest living member of our house, and also the most pious. As part of an old law, Grenell earned the title of Grace by ruling from Eastfair, which consequently grants him powers as head of the Hextorian faith, a title he has held for as long as I can remember. Some believe it is a mere formality, but I can assure you, Grenell's influence is far from mere. At the start of the Greyhawk Wars, hostilities brewed within the faith in what came to be known as the Iron Schism of 583. Hextorians were forced to make a choice. One side remained loyal to Ivan V, while others defied him. Grenell supported Ivan, and as a result gained many allies, and perhaps just as many enemies. These allies include Hextorian faith-based tribes from the Rakers, a bond which dates back to a signed pact of non-aggression by the North Province just before the invasion and subsequent takeover of the Bone March by the Rakers in 561. The Rakers were checked by the lands of Nurl and Ratik and Spinecastle, the last standing city in the Bone March, which also served as its capital. This fueled an alliance between Nurl, Ratik, and Spinecastle, who condemned Grenell's lack of support and action against this aggression. They should have known His Grace would not make enemies of those who worship at the same altar. It most certainly would not have been accepted by those within the clergy. Some in the alliance accused Grenell of taking part in the murder of the last ruler of the Bone March, Marquis Clement Vere, who was killed in 563 when Hextorian Raker tribes sacked Spinecastle just 2 years after their initial invasion of the Bone March. Grenell denies these claims, calling them false and riddled with propaganda. Among his more secular allies are those of the House of Torquann, a rather powerful family, second only to us. Delglath of Rinlaru is perhaps the Torquann's most reputable lord and the eldest of his family. He was appointed ruler of Rinlaru by Ivan V when a fatal illness took the life of his father Grendeman at the start of the Greyhawk Wars. Delglath's son, Prince Axxus of Kaport Bay, and his nephew Thornden also pledged support to Grace Grenell. Tyrus Torquann of Altia, however, is not known to have as warm a relation to Grenell as the other members of his house, or perhaps that's all hearsay. To be clear, the two are not enemies. There are many lords of Naelax in the North Province, but some of Grenel's most notable relatives and strongest supporters are myself, Romesius, Prince of Stringent and Warden of the West, and my liege Haston Naelax, Lord of Edgefield, Land of the Red Griffin. My contribution to our family is of vital importance. You see, my lands in Stringent are directly bordered with the Highlands, and so it is my duty to keep a watchful eye on its commander, Alistair Garasteth, and their activities. Our conscripts are kept quite busy and are fairly compensated. Much to our dismay, Haston Naelax of Edgefield has lost many troops to Alistair Garasteth, finding work as soldiers and hirelings, serving the Highlander castles and keeps. Haston has condemned these deserters who traded in their pride for gold. I cannot understand why any of them would leave a position of such prestige. Their disgrace hath earned them a rather large bounty. Rewards have been posted all throughout Edgefield calling for their capture. I am sure my liege would find suitable labor for those who return if they can tolerate the weight of heavy iron cuffs wrapped around their ankles and a matching collar around their necks, all bound in chains to serve as a reminder at what happens to those who betrayed a lord of House Naelax.
We of House Garasteth are and have always been the true guardians of Aerdian culture and wisdom, and the gatekeepers of recorded knowledge. This ancestral duty is ours to bear, and ours alone. We take great pride in producing some of history's greatest sages and scholars, and because we believe so strongly in our obligation, our devotion to learning and preserving the Aerdian ethos is second to none. As with any family, there is always one apple that does fall farthest from the tree. Only 3 years ago, my valiant nephew, Baron General Alistair Garasteth, traded away his more arable lands in southern Bryn Larue in the east for the strongholds of the Highlands in the west. The Highlands are but an old military borderland previously owned by Delglath Torquann and manned by his approbate son, Tyrus Torquann. In this arrangement, Delglath has expanded his lands in Bryn Larue, while Alistair has weakened our position here. Apprehensive as I was with this decision, it was not mine to make. They were his lands by right, and unlike other kingdoms, we of Aerdy do not have formal heads of our houses. Each lord is responsible for his own doing. He did manage to acquire a small army loyal to our banner, I'll give him that. The old Highlander Imperial Force, a force of which I believe he intends to use. Though Alistair has never expressed any dissent towards Grenel, Naelax, or the Torquanns, it is no secret he detests Grenel's relatives in Stringent and Edgefield. Word has it, the Baron General has dispatched a small cavalry from Red Falls Keep to aid Nerl in the coming battle with Tyrus Torquann's host. I, for one, do not support this endeavor, nor do I meddle in the affairs of other lords and their lands. Might does not always make right, and military aggression was never our strong suit. As Lord of the city of Winither, I, Lankaster Garasteth, have an obligation to govern its affairs, particularly in commerce and trade. Throughout the north, Winither is known for its goods and services, and as one of the twin cities, Bryn Larue being the other. Delglath Torquann understands my position regarding my nephew. We have a mutual interest in securing a steady flow of trade between our cities, an integral part in keeping the realm intact, especially now in these trying times. Clearly, our presence in the North Province is not as dominant as House Naelax or Torquann, but our influence here has proven to be impactful. Our supply ports played a key role in providing support to Overking Ivad during the wars, as well as our prudence. When Ivad gave me a direct order to have our naval vessels dispatched to aid the Sea Barons in the Aspity Isles, I refused. Not out of disobedience, but out of caution. You see, my spies had informed me of an imminent attack on our city by those mindless barbarian sea raiders. Had our war galleys not been there to stop the invasion, we would have lost the ports to those savages of Grenda Bay. I was not punished, but instead praised for my foresight. It was the right choice, and if given the chance to do it again, I would.
Ren LaRue, Atir, Caport Bay, all recognized as the most vital coastal regions in the North Province, all ruled by my family, House Torquann. This position of land allows us to dominate the coastal trade routes of the North Province and oversee goods and services imported into the mainland. It is true our lords have a reputation of stern rulership. Austerity is exactly what keeps us in good favor with House Naelax, a powerful ally to have on your side, and everyone knows it. I am Axxus Torquann, ruler of Caport Bay. My father, Delgrath, is the patriarch of our family. From the city of Rendaru, he administers much in the way of commerce in our lands, a city known for its magnificent structures and designs. I have never known a better man than my father. Brilliant, strong, masterful. I can only hope to carry on the legacy of his achievements. My younger brother, Tyrus, or as some call him, the Sun Prince, owns the lands of Atir. He once held the title of Warden of the Highlands until my father traded those lands away in return for more land here in Rin LaRue. He granted Atir to Tyrus, not to me. I would stay in Caport Bay and keep watch on those troublesome wild folk across Grendeb Bay, as is my duty. I will serve my purpose. I believe my father will see my worth one day, and I will be ready. Now, where was I? Oh yes, Rin LaRue. Some believe my father's motivation behind the trade was to gain more control of Rin LaRue and the surrounding lands, save that of Winetha. The Garasteths already have their hands deep in the pockets of many well-known merchants this far east, so it was a smart move on our part to close the gap and extend our reach just that much more. Let them have the Highlands. Alistair Garasteth was not fit to rule such a prestigious land anyway. It seems border patrol suits him better. In the meantime, Tyrus has assembled troops from Atir and Rin LaRue and is currently on the march to invade Nura. The Sun Prince has won the support of many nobles of our house for his service in the Highlands. If he is successful, he could then turn north through the Tisa Torrent and recapture the Highlands, returning to his old position there. What is the Sun Prince's motivation to march west? Were the Highlands that important to him where he is willing to drain his coffers and risk the lives of so many to reclaim it? Is he working with Naelax to aid the Bone March and their interests in Ratic? Or maybe the move is a strategic plan to position himself from a place of negotiation. I wish I could tell you, but my brother is stubborn and does not share such thoughts with me. Perhaps Raishan, his most trusted advisor, knows. I am sure the one person who does know is my sister, Siaima, the Lady of Caport Bay.
He has been actively courting her as of late. Now, I know what you are thinking. How could he marry his own sister? The answer is simple. He is not my brother by blood. He was fostered into our family by my father a long time ago. There are many questions and rumors about that story, but only my father knows the truth.
There was a time when the lands of Nur, Ratik, and the Bone March worked together as one. The March was an outpost of the Great Kingdom of Aerdy, created to fend off barbarian incursion, but that was long ago. It owed fealty to the lords of the North Province of the kingdom. Just before the March was overrun by Raker tribes nearly 23 years ago, there were rumors of a formal alliance, a union between the March and Ratik, supported by Nur. This did not fall on deaf ears back in the North Province. It was not the first time a ruler of the March defied his overlord. There is a history of it dating to the very first lord of the March, as far back as the 2nd century. What can I say? Defiance is in our blood, and so is honor. Foolish honor. That is what spelled the beginning of the end for us. The Raker tribes ambushed the March, who had no support from its lords in the North Province, and sent its people, my people, into the hills. Well, at least the ones that made it out alive. What those tribes did to us, to our homes, to our women and our children. I can still hear the cries. I can still see the slaughter, the smell of blood, and the sound of flesh ripped from their bones. I will speak no more of it. I was but a child, but I remember. They will remain as they are, in my nightmares and in the deepest, darkest corners of my memory. Today, the tribes still rule a loosely organized Bone March. The savage bastards can barely govern themselves. Something tells me the North Province prefers to keep it that way. Ratik and Nur had further intensified their alliance when Lady Everlay of Nur married the ruler of Ratik's son, Alain IV. Strangely, Alain did not send forces to aid Nur in the coming Torquann invasion, but perhaps he has not the means. Whispers say Alain is planning an attempt to retake Spine Castle, and has already moved his forces into position. Perhaps this is part of a bigger plan to drive out the tribes and occupy the March. Surely it would not bode well for the lords of the North Province should Ratik conquer the entire Bone March. A difficult hill to climb, but revenge can be one hell of a motivator. Perhaps this is the reason for Tyrus Torquann's invasion of Nur. Or is Nur being used as a distraction while Ratik invades the Bone March? Whatever the reason, one thing is certain. The larger scale Greyhawk wars may be over, but the smaller scale battles have just begun. Not too long ago, my company, the Bone Rakers, were hired by Alain to go north and set up patrols for several of his castle keeps in Ratik. Something about a peaceful transition of power in the Highlands. None of my business, really, but it was easy work for honest pay. As soon as we were done, an old Demstrin lord in exile approached us with a rather generous offer, which we have happily accepted. If we are successful, word will spread of our victory. Then they will know who the Bone Rakers are. We are not to be challenged. We are to be feared. We will be on the winning side. We will survive this battle. For as a famous sellsword once told me, what good is having gold if you won't live to spend it?